Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. You probably don't know this, but TNA actually had a pay-per-view, Turning Point, on November the 29th, 2024. You probably heard nothing about it. And the reason for this is obvious. It is an absolutely filler show that is filmed in front of a dead crowd who didn't really care about much of anything. And it's filled with people nobody wants to see. And I am now officially in the thought process that TNA and AEW just do not care about the future. They do not care about the future, man. They're still trying to get the last little drips out of people that they have no business continuing to be in wrestling right now. I mean, look at this card, bro. Just listen to the card as I go through it. Mike Santana versus Frank Kazarian. Brian Myers, Eric Young, John Skyler, Hammerstone, Rhino, and Joe Hendry in the Turkey Bowl match. Laredo Kid versus Moose. Steve Macklin versus Josh Alexander, no disqualification. The Hardys and Ace Austin versus Kushida, Zachary Wentz, and Matt Riddle. Yes, that Matt Riddle. 2 out of 3 falls. Jordan Grace versus Masha Slamovich for the Knockouts title. That was, okay, that's something worth talking about. And in the main event of all things, Nick Namath versus Eddie Edwards. I mean, what year is it? What year is it that Eddie Edwards is in the main event of your show? What year is it? Oh, Lord, have mercy. Jesus, he is not like Randy Orton or anything like this. This guy is washed beyond belief. Let's just go through this card and get this thing over with, okay? Nick Namath defeats Eddie Edwards. Okay, obviously, right? This is not even a house show main event. This is pointless. This is stupid. This match isn't worth watching. 90% of this show isn't worth watching, by the way. 99% of this show isn't worth watching. If you are paying to see these TNA shows, you should be angry. Because why in the world is Eddie Edwards in the main event of a show that you're paying to see? It'd have been fine if it was TV, but they're asking you to pay to see these special events. And this is the quality of the main event. This guy who has been out of shape for the last 4 years. Get the fuck out of here. Okay, moving on. Jordan Grace versus Masha Slamovich. This was fucking good. These girls are badass. Masha Slamovich wins 2 falls to 1. They worked really hard. Jordan Grace is just working her way out of the door. It's pretty obvious to anybody with eyeballs and ears that she's just counting down the days as she gets ready to go to WWE. She's wrapping up. And that's fine. But look, she's actually going out there working. She's putting forth her best efforts. She really did a good job putting Masha over here. Masha also did a great job at Bloodsport when she wrestled Ye Ling Lee or whatever the fuck. Ye Li Ling? Xia Li. She worked as Xia Li in NXT. They had a hell of a match at Bloodsport. So Masha Slamovich remains one of the best women's wrestlers in the world that you'll probably never see because nobody watches TNA. And then because they don't invest in signing young talent, especially young talent that WWE or AEW have not yet found. It's one thing that you could say, well, WWE is going around signing anybody with a heartbeat. All right, and AEW also does a similar thing. But there's still plenty of young wrestlers that are in Japan, that are in Europe, and in Canada and other places that you could bring in that you don't need to keep using the same people over and over again. And some of these people are leaving. Jordan Grace is out of here, bro. I just found out she's 28. I feel like she's been on TV since the first Bush administration. And she's only 28. She's out of here, bro. She ain't sticking around no more longer than she have to. And they probably not going to drug test her in WWE anyway. I don't think they drug test them girls. So she's out of here. First chance she gets, she's on the first thing smoking in Orlando. Or Las Vegas, or wherever it's going to be by the time she gets there. Now, the Hardys and Ace Austin versus Kushida, Zachary Wentz, and Matt Riddle. Matt Riddle is in this match because it was supposed to be Trey Miguel, but he couldn't make it. So it was supposed to be Kushida and the Rascals versus the Hardys and Ace Austin. So Matt Riddle, it was kind of some ruffling of the feathers of, a lot of the TNA fans. Some of the woke ones, they are like, why is Matt Riddle getting a job? Don't they understand that everybody hates Matt Riddle? It's like, not everybody. He's a contentious personality, but he's not in jail for anything. So I guess he can work in TNA. What's the problem? I mean, there is a lot of other people that you could probably go to other than, 40-year-old Matt Riddle, but he hasn't been beaten to death in TNA yet. He isn't a guy that has, even though he's older, even though he's been around, he isn't a guy that has been on this television for 5 or 6 years in the mid card doing nothing. So hopefully they can do something interesting with Matt Riddle and can make him fun, and he can have fun matches and maybe push him to do something interesting on the show. He could be a very solid X Division champion if that's what you want to do. But the match itself was fine. It was a bunch of baby faces wrestling each other. I think it was basically like a Chris Bay tribute match, kind of. But there was nothing on the line, nothing gained, nothing lost. Nobody was feuding with each other. It's just everybody's buddies, and that's it. The fourth match on the show was no disqualification. Steve Maclin defeating Josh Alexander. Oh, this match was so long. It went on for so long. Oh my God. The only interesting bit of this match, as long as it went, is that Steve Maclin brought out a bag. Usually there's dumb tacks in there, or Legos, or nuts and bolts. But this time it was shell casings. Like shell cases that come off bullets. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. Okay. And I think he superplexed Josh Alexander onto them, or he used his finisher off the top rope, whatever. Josh Alexander's on his way out of TNA as well. He recently announced his retirement, quote unquote, from the independent. Said his last independent show will be in January. And he's tired of the hustle. This guy's almost 40. He's 37 years old. And he's married. He's got children. It's time for something a little bit more stable. That leads a lot of people to think he's going to go to WWE, because why else would you quit the independents if you're going to go to AEW? You can just still work the indies, but maybe he's going to make enough money in AEW where he don't have to work independents. But it's not looking like he's going to stick around in TNA, and he didn't want to stick around in TNA anyway after Scott D'Amore left. So this has been a long time coming. This has been something that they should have been able to foresee when Scott D'Amore got fired, that Josh Alexander was going to leave, because Josh Alexander was a big Scott D'Amore guy. And I don't think Scott has the funds to run a televised wrestling product right now. So he's going to probably sign with one of the bigger companies. I'm going to cross my fingers and hope it's not WWE, because I don't think Josh Alexander is all that interesting. I don't think he's all that great. I think you let AEW win that sweepstakes. Maybe you help him drive the cost up, but I think you just let AEW take this guy. He fits their banger style that they love to do. He fits that perfectly. So you got Jordan Grace on her way out. Josh Alexander's on his way out. And Mike Bailey, Speedball Mike Bailey, he's on his way out too. He lost the X Division title to Moose, who is also not one of my favorite wrestlers. I can't believe Moose is still around. My God. Moose wrestled on this show against Laredo Kid. And while the match was decent, I knew Laredo Kid wasn't going to win, because he never wins. Ever. Laredo Kid never, ever wins. I don't understand why he even... I guess money is what it is, because this guy is so talented, and all he does in TNA is job. It's just like when they had Taurus, who is a Black Mortos, or whatever the fuck he's calling himself in AEW. The Beast Mortos. He was in AEW, and when he was in TNA, he did nothing but lose. No matter how talented these guys are, they're just losers, and this is very unfortunate. Because Moose is a bum. I know a lot of people like Moose, but to me, he's a bum. He can't talk. He can't work. He has no charisma. He has no presence. all this stuff is artificial. All the big entrance and him leading a faction and all that shit is whack. Moose is just garbage. All right, I'm not a big Moose guy. Not at all. So him being an X Division champion, and especially since he won it on TV, that was Speedball Mike Bailey. Well, I guess he pretty much gave his notice before he left, because that's where he ended up losing the title. And there's a lot of talk that he's going to end up in AEW soon. That's what he's been linked with. I know he worked Bloodsport recently. Mike Bailey did. So they're losing guys, and they're not trying to secure younger talent. Instead, they're just taking older talent and just reuse and repurposing them. And maybe it's because these older talent are cheap. I mean, I don't see why else you would book Brian Myers. So let's go into this stupid Turkey Bowl match, which Brian Myers lost, but it featured Eric Young, who Eric Young has no business being on television. He has been useless for a really long time. If you want to use him as a mascot, as a backstage ambassador, fine. Maybe he should be like an on-screen ambassador for TNA, kind of like William Regal in NXT. Eric Young could take that role in TNA, but he should not be wrestling on television. I don't think anybody finds him interesting or intriguing as a character. John Schuyler, come on. He's a jabroni. Hammerstone, which has a lot of potential, both him and Jake something, they're not ever going to be treated correctly here. They put fucking Rhino in this match. Rhino is in this match. And of course, Joe Hendry, the most over guy in all of TNA, who they managed to beat into the dirt. And I guess because he's leaving as well, and they know it, that he's not going to stick around, because he got super over in NXT and started kind of running his jabber about, wanting to go into the Royal Rumble and all this kind of stuff. So he's not going to stick around. He won this match, so Brian Myers has to wear the turkey suit, but this was a pointless match. I didn't even watch it. That's how bad this was. I skipped this match. As soon as I saw Brian Myers, Eric Young, and Rhino, I skipped it. There's no point in watching this. I don't like 90% of the people in this match. I'm not watching it. So I know Brian Myers lost. I do know that. But this is not even watchable as far as I'm concerned. The first match was Santana versus Frankie Kazarian. Frankie Kazarian, why is he still around? I mean, he doesn't really add anything to your product. He's like Chavo Guerrero at this point. Is he a good worker? Yes. Is he ever going to sell a ticket? No. Is anybody ever going to be upset that Frankie Kazarian didn't show up? No. It's not that I dislike him, but you can't tell me that TNA, which has been around for 20 years, cannot find younger talent than Frankie Kazarian, Rhino, Brian Myers, Eric Young, Moose, Josh Alexander, Steve Macklin, and Eddie Edwards, and Kushida, who's been around forever, and the Hardys, who have been around literally since 1994. So there's so many people in this company that have been around for decades. Rhino, for God's sakes. You can't find any young talent anywhere in the world that you can bring in. I mean, it's shameful, man. I don't know who's booking TNA. I need to know that. Maybe, and I said this before, when Scott D'Amore was running the company, that was the big problem with the roster. They're not bringing in anybody who gets any attention. What the X division was the division of TNA that got the most attention. When people wanted to watch TNA, they wanted to watch the X division, which was the younger guys who were, doing interesting. Most of the time it was work rate stuff. They were out there dumping each other on his heads. It's all this stuff that AEW does now. And yes, I know AEW is really going out there. There was a time when a guy like Darius Martin would have been in TNA, but AEW's picking those guys up now. I get that. But there's plenty of guys that AEW have not picked up that you can go out there and find. WWE is finding some right now with their WWE ID program. You can't tell me TNA can't find any of these guys. You can't find any young people to replenish the X division. You can't find any young people to replenish your tag team division. Now, I understand you might want veterans at the top. You know, you want Nick Namath to be in there. But how about you actually use some of the guys that's on your roster and you push those guys up? I've been, saying for years it's been time for guys like Zachary Wentz and Trey Miguel to go up the card. A guy like Chris Bay before he got injured. A guy like Ace Austin, they've been around for a while. It's time to move those guys up the card or move them out. And that should always be the motivation. Is you're supposed to be either improving people or if or rehabbing people if you need to. But there needs to be a purpose for them to be on the show. That anything that involves the system, in fact, that entire faction should be fired. Everybody in that faction should be jobless tomorrow morning. Because they're useless. All of them. I don't care how much loyalty they have to the company. They don't draw you any money. Nobody talks about these people except for in negative tones. And for the people who don't know who the system is, it's Brian Myers, Eddie Edwards, Moose, Alicia Edwards, and I think fucking Fandango. Like, none of these people are never going to do anything. All of them are old. They're washed. Let them go. Bring in some other talent. Help develop new talent. Even if you lose them in 2 years. At least you had them for 2 years, okay? But this can't stand. This cannot go like this forever. TNA will die. Not because they're on a dead program, but they have a dead fucking roster. This is a zombie roster. You try to talk people into watching this product. And then you serve them up fucking Steve Maclin and Josh Alexander. After you told them to watch Frankie Kazarian again. He washed out of AEW already. You want to bring him in as a legacy guy for, TNA for a little bit. Okay. But you don't consistently push him and, have him win, big tournament. Like he won that Call Your Shot gauntlet or whatever. Like he should not have won that. That should be for young talent that you're trying to build, not for old-ass Frankie Kazarian. It's like somebody who must be best friends of these people are the ones who are booking them. And that should not be the case. Whoever is the booker of TNA should be fired. Whoever is recruiting them for them should be fired. I know you don't have the money that AEW has and WWE has. I get that, man. It's brutal out there. But there's still plenty of independent wrestlers all over the globe who are looking for stable work. And maybe they're willing to work out of, whatever you can get them for. And I know that TNA only works, weekends or something like that. But you got to be able to get out there and be competitive. At the very least, try to find some people that William Regal has overlooked. People that AEW doesn't really bring anybody in until they make a name for themselves on the independents anyway. So you got to pay attention. You got to go out there and be aggressive. And I've been saying this for 3 or 4 years when it comes to TNA. You got to go out there and be aggressive and pick up talent. Because it seems to me that just by looking at this show, and it's similar to the previous shows that they've had, that they've given up on young talent. And they've just decided all the young talent are going to go to NXT or Ring of Honor. So we'll just be the haven for all the washouts, the people who got fired, the people who got cut, the people who got nowhere else to go. We'll be the safe haven for those, the Matt Riddles, the Jeff Hardys, the people who might be over. But, WWE is not interested in bringing them in, and AEW is not interested in bringing them in, so we'll keep them. Might as well bring Low Key in and Austin Aries, too, while you're at it. At least there'll be different faces on this show, and not just fucking Moose and Eddie Edwards every goddamn week. So, I'm repeating myself at this point. Masha Slamovich is so good, and they're wasting her because she has nobody to work with. And once Jordan Grace is gone, she's not going to have a great dance partner. You definitely got to go out there and try to find some girls for Masha Slamovich to be able to work with, because the Knockouts division was also a signature division for TNA. And even if your world title division is full of old guys like Moose and Nick Namath, that's how TNA traditionally was. It was Jeff Jarrett and Raven and, Rhino and all. And Rhino was old then, okay? But that was what, their main event was. Sting, Kurt Angle, those guys. If that's what your main event is now, okay, fine. That's just typical TNA. But your women's division and your X division and the tag team division have always been what was the gold standard for TNA. Specifically was the women's division and the X division at different points in time. There's plenty of talent out there that can fill your X division and that can fill your women's division. You just have to actually go and find them. There's no excuse for you not to have them, So this show was filler. It was trash. Just go watch Masha Slamovich versus Jordynne Grace. It's the only thing on this show worth watching. And it's because there's the two best female wrestlers in the world, two of the best female wrestlers in the world having an excellent match. Other than that, fuck this show.
No one does it better.